All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and thank you for downloading this latest episode. We're still in June. It's a great month. A lot of summertime things happening. The Forbidden Door is also happening, which I will be attending, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But we have a lovely topic here at hand. We have the Joshi Wrestling impact, how Joshi Wrestling impacted the business at hand. But again, I can't do this alone because, to be honest, I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to Joshi. But thankfully, I have my main man from TikTok. You can find him at Light Skin Gajin, also known as Deenard. Deenard, thank you so much for joining me here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Please, thank you so much. But before we get started, give me like a Cliff Note version of how you got into wrestling, your fandom, everything like that.
I mean, I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. It basically started um, right around, at when I was a young child, young baby. My dad would sit me down, and we used to watch in syndication episodes of World Class Championship Wrestling. Yes,
Mm.
that's how old I am. I'm an '80s baby,
Ooh, great
so
era though.
we would we would watch World Class Championship Wrestling. The Freebirds, the Von Erichs. When my parents got cable, we would watch uh, World Championship Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions. Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, and all them. We would also we would also get the USA Network and watch the World Wrestling Federation.
Mm.
Vince's company as well. So I was always a fan of wrestling, and it really didn't matter to me what promotion it is. And that's what I always try to tell people. I don't sit and just watch one company, I watch it all.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I try to watch as much wrestling as I can. Doesn't matter what promotion, what company. And that's why I'm kind of interested in the topic today, which is Joshi Wrestling, because I've always heard the term. I've heard like when AEW was first starting, they were gearing towards Joshi wrestlers, and I was always interested to see how that style was different. So, what got you into Joshi wrestling? But for the viewers or the listeners at home, what is Joshi wrestling?
well, Joshi is Japanese and it means girl. And just Joshi Pro Wrestle is that translated is Joshi Pro Wrestling from Japanese to English. It's always been around since even from the days from All Japan Wrestling. A lot of people look at Roshi Ogawa as pretty much the godfather of Joshi Wrestling. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, he was working at All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling, and he was a photographer who basically acted as the spokesperson and head of public relations when he was with AJW.
Mhm.
Um, he eventually became a manager for the Crush Gals in Chigusa, Nagoya, and Linus Asuka. Um, when that company ended up folding under, he went ahead and promoted a new promotion known as Arson. And once that company went over, we get the company we know now as Stardom. He was pretty much a main reason for why that company was the reason how big it is today. Rossi, Nane Takahashi, one of the trainers that is basically responsible for training most of the wrestlers there in Fuka.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny now with Rossi's new promotion in Marigold that those three now have come together full circle and are now working together again with this new promotion.
And what got you into Joshi to begin with? Was it a certain match? Was it a certain style? Was it a certain talent that drew you to the promotion? Or did you just kind of watch it by chance and then you just kind of got hooked on it?
I mainly fell into it by chance because it was very rare that here in America you would actually see Japanese wrestlers,
Mhm.
whether it be wrestlers from New Japan, All Japan, any wrestlers from Japan. I knew that there was wrestling over there, just very hard to get by. Back in the '90s, you had to exchange tapes with somebody who was, you know, miles upon miles away from you.
Mm.
So What really got me into Joshi was, wrestlers like Bull Nakano, um, excuse me, and that was one wrestler I believe that actually got me into it. And in the age of the internet, when the internet evolved, started seeing more and more matches, and that's how I discovered wrestlers like Io Shirai, Kairi Hojo, who we know now as Kairi Sane, Mayu Iwatani, and also what really helped was the Mae Young Classic when they started bringing in a lot of these wrestlers from Japan, and that made me do some even more research and history about Joshi. And that's how I discovered Stardom. That's how I discovered Tokyo Joshi Pro. That's how I discovered Seedling and all these other different Joshi promotions that were out there in Japan.
Mhm. Now, here in the United States, women's wrestling was almost kind of like a side attraction. It wasn't very much focused on until probably around 2007 when the Knockouts division was created by TNA. When Stardom first started, when I first started hearing it, it was probably like in 2012, like around that independent wrestling boom that was happening. Uh, why do you think it took a while for people to find promotions like Stardom and talents like Kairi Sane, Asuka, Bull Nakano, and really see how the Joshi style was influencing the modern day professional wrestling?
I mean, for the most part, pro wrestling has always been, yeah, and I hate to be that dude, but it's always been dominated by men.
Mhm.
Not a whole lot of people sit up here and view women as being the main attraction. Everybody thought it was the side attraction. And me, like I said, I am a fan of it all. I don't care if it's men wrestling, I don't care if it's women wrestling, I don't care if it's an intergender match. As long as it's entertaining, I will sit down and watch it. So, and I believe it was this past Hall of Fame where they set Medusa actually sat up and said that they were pretty much the trailblazers for women's wrestling to be as hard hitting as it was. And you can definitely see it as women were actually, as the years progressed. Look at the ruthless aggression era with Trish Stratus and Lita and Victoria and all those women up in there who wanted to have really good matches, you know, because there were dudes like Fit Finley who are actually willing to give these women a chance. And then you look at some of the wrestlers in Japan who actually wanted to bring that style out and actually show wrestlers like Asuka, wrestlers like Nane Takahashi. They are the ones who basically tried to influence that style in Japan, you know.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
So the style from Japan being brought into United States, and you could definitely see it nowadays. More chops, more hitting, hard hitting style. I was recently reading Becky Lynch's book, autobiography, and the WWE style, even back then when she was first coming in, would people would tell her run like a girl or hit like a girl or something like that, and she didn't know what that meant because she was just running how she thought it was. And it's really cool that now we're at a place in professional wrestling where women are allowed to wrestle like pretty much as hard hitting as anybody else would. Where did you see kind of that transition happening in US based promotions?
In US based promotions, I first noticed it in the indies and well, first off in TNA, that when the knockouts division was starting to get created, and then you see it transition into the indies, with promotions such as, CZW and Ring of Honor when they would feature women's matches. Um, any of the just small indie promotions, it's we're now in 2024. There is no such thing as run like a girl or hit like a girl
Mhm.
anymore. It's now, to steal a phrase. I now I'm blanking on the woman who says it now, but put your hair up and square up. I believe it was Sonya Deville.
Mhm.
Now it's coming to me. So, but like I said, I believe it was TNA and the Indies that started doing this. And once WWE saw it and was like, you know what? Maybe now we can start featuring these women in more high profile style matches now. And you've definitely seen it now in WWE where women are now main eventing more PLEs. I know we don't call them pay per views anymore, but
We've been
Still,
calling them
yeah,
pay-per-views for 20 years. It's tough to switch it.
I'm still calling them pay per
Yeah.
views. I don't care. Technically, we're paying to view it, whether it's on a streaming service or not.
Yeah,
So,
very fair. So with the whole thing with the impact that happened to U.S. based promotions, when WWE first started bringing more talent in from the independents and then later from Joshi, and when Kana, who became Asuka, came in, do you think that was the right person to kind of introduce the style to NXT fans, WWE fans, or did you think there might have been somebody else that could have introduced it better?
I think Asuka slash Kana was the right person to bring it in because she was the biggest name out there at the time to introduce this style to the American audiences. And you see what it's done for them. Asuka has created a entire fandom, not just in her home country in Japan, but here in the States as well.
And with Asuka, well, she had that tremendous undefeated streak in NXT, tremendous championship run. You could argue that she had the best women's championship run of NXT, and maybe even you could go further, one of the best women's title runs in the past decade plus, just with her being extra dominant. And her transition into the main roster, a lot of people either found head scratching or didn't really live up to its full potential. What are your thoughts on Asuka's run overall? And do you think WWE treated her like the star she is, or did you think they could have capitalized on some things a little bit more here or there?
Well, I mean, you can pretty much tell that there was a tale of two different storytellers. There's the Paul Levesque way of telling a story, and there's the Vince McMahon way of telling a story. You know, here's a guy who's, studied the business of professional wrestling, knows what it takes to create a good match, and even knows how to, entertain as well. I mean, he has learned how to entertain from his father in law. And then you have the father in law who, I guess, I'm gonna call it what it is. He's just a little out of touch. He probably didn't understand what made Asuka so special, and Triple H did. So, I mean, I guess you could pretty much say that it was a very lapse in judgment. It was lapse in judgment in how the main roster handled the creative booking decisions for Asuka, I believe.
And with that creative booking decisions, other people from Joshi Wrestling would later go to WWE. There was Kairi Sane, IYO Sky. I believe Toni Storm did a stint in Stardom, I believe. So you had.
She did do a stint in Stardom. She, at one point, or she still is. Well, no. Let me rephrase that. At one point, Toni Storm was the youngest five-star Grand Prix winner
Hmm.
before this last year when Suzu Suzuki won it.
Now, what is the
I believe
five-star Grand Prix for individuals who don't know?
the the five-star Grand Prix is basically Stardom's version of the G1 Climax.
Hmm.
And if you are familiar with the G1 Climax, that is New Japan's biggest tournament of the summer. The round robin style blocks. They now have 4 blocks. They used to be 2. Stardom still does a 2 block round robin style tournament where the block winners face each other. But I mean, I like those tournaments because it reminds me of a competitive sports league like the NFL or like the NBA, where you have people fighting for playoff
Hmm.
spots, essentially. That's why I enjoy it so
Hmm.
much.
I think a lot of people are drawn to the round robin style of tournaments, and I really do think that's why Joshi Wrestling kind of like was the cream that rose to the top. And when you treat something like a sports based presentation, shockingly, people will be accepting of it. Why do you think it took so long for people to, at least here in the United States, to actually realize that this can be entertaining to a different audience if given the chance?
Because you have people who like I said, you have people who like the NFL, you have people who like the NBA. It's that competitiveness of sports because it leaves you on edge. If your team needs a victory to get that last spot in the playoffs, I mean, you're going to sit there on edge on the tip of your couch, hoping that your team makes it up in there. Same thing with professional wrestling. You're sitting up there, you're watching these, like I said, you're take for example the G1. You need Naito to win, you know, and here he is. He's facing a guy who he has not beaten in years, in let's say Okada. You know, he ends up beating Okada, and you're excited for that.
Mm. That's right, because it's like there's always different stories to tell within a round robin setting. You could have these two people who haven't interacted. You have these people who haven't interacted in years, and then you have these people who have an ongoing feud. So there's a lot of like story arcs and then like mini stories that happen, and it really truly is like animated shows like there are if you're watching like Blue Bloods, or you're watching like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon, where it's like an overarching story arc with all these mini stories in there. So there's a lot of things that can be settled within these tournaments. Now, with Stardom and just Joshi in general, what would you consider the top prize in Joshi wrestling overall?
Well, the top prize, at least for Joshi overall, because Stardom is the biggest promotion out there, the top prize is the Red Belt, the World of Stardom Championship.
Mm.
The people who have held it, IYO Sky being one of them, I believe IYO is the one with the most cumulative defenses of the Red Belt.
Mm.
Um, she's also a Grand Slam champion. She's held every championship that has pretty much been offered at that time. Joining her is her former Thunder Rock Tag Team Champion, the person who IYO betrayed in Mayu Iwatani.
Mm.
But the red belt is the top prize. I'm over here just basically pulling up numbers, but Io Shirai has the most cumulative days as champion at 1,014. However, Nane Takahashi is the longest reigning champion with her one reign of 602 days. And I think that's what makes these girls very special, is they treat their World of Stardom title reigns as something special.
It really does remind me of UFC championship reigns, where it's they count the number of defensives, it's not necessarily the days held. Do you think wrestling
Mm-hmm.
should kind of gear towards number of defenses rather than number of days, like we did with Roman, or do you think people are more drawn to the length of a championship run rather than the number of defenses?
See, that's where I kind of feel like it differs in between
Mhm.
cultures, where we think of the length, we think of the length of a championship being like the overall defining factor of what makes a great champion. Whereas over in Japan, they're thinking, oh, you have defended your title this many times. You know, forget the fact that you've held the title over 600 days. You have seven different defenses in those 600 days. And I think that to them means something special. I mean, like I said, when you look at the total of defenses Io Shirai has over her two reigns, it's 24. Nobody even comes close. The only one that comes close is Shorty with 10, and she was champion for a year.
Jeez. Yeah, that's really impressive with just how much respect goes into each and every defense. It really does feel like every match is like a big fight feel. And us over here in the United States, we haven't felt that since probably like Roman, when Roman was still like probably like 2 years into his run, where they were just kind of like treating every defense kind of like a little bit more special because he wasn't appearing as much. So, with the influentialness that Joshi Wrestling has, who do you think, if I were to pull up a WWE or NXT match, that I could go watch them in WWE or NXT, then I could watch Stardom? Who most closely resembles how they were in Stardom, do you think?
Um, you know what? I think it's a combination of four different women just because of how much they wanted women's wrestling to be taken seriously. And that would be Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes Monet, Bailey, and Becky Lynch. Those four right there, I believe, closely resemble the style of Joshi.
That is again the four horsewomen, definitely the most influential women's wrestling that we've had over here, and definitely was the transition period from the Divas era to the current era that we have
Hmm.
now. What do you think that WWE AEW Impact currently can take from Joshi Wrestling, whether it's Stardom or any other promotion that they haven't already yet?
I mean, it's not just the fact that it's hard hitting, it's not just the fact that they try to put together the greatest matches. They're also very entertaining and able to tell a story with less time doing backstage, segments and stuff like that. If you watch a show in Japan, it's not just Joshi, but even New Japan, Pro Wrestling Noah, uh, All Japan, they do a lot of their storytelling in the ring during matches or post match. You know, that to me is what's special. I barely speak the language of Japanese, trying to learn, but I barely speak the language. But yet I can pretty much tell you what is going on without actually understanding the language. And I think that to me is what's special about wrestling in Japan.
That's why occasionally I'll always throw in like a New Japan match with my rotation, just because the vibe is different, the crowd is different. They'll react to different moves differently how we would in the states. Like I remember watching a New Japan match, and there was like a big uproar because someone did like a tackle drop down, and right here it's just kind of like it's just kind of a par for the course. But they really do respect the art form that is pro wrestling over there. And they've definitely been influential. But another thing that was influential, at least here in the States, was the WCW Cruiserweight division. Do you think that Joshi Wrestling is just as influential as the Cruiserweight division in present day?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, look at all the things that they have, pretty much done. They've definitely influenced. I mean, they were influenced with the trios titles with Mexico and stuff, but look at the trios matches that they have in Stardom, or anywhere else like in TJPW. Um, Not only that, but the move set. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Saya Kamitani, but I made a video talking about on TikTok talking about who I felt was the greatest high flyer. Everybody will say Rey Mysterio. Everybody will say Matt Sydal, Ricochet, Jeff Hardy, whoever. To me, the greatest high flyer is Saya Kamitani because her Phoenix Splash is a thing of beauty.
I gotta definitely watch her out because again, I'm a noob when it comes to Joshi wrestling, so I really want to expand my education now. For somebody like me or anybody else who's interested in Joshi, what kind of stories or matches do you recommend for somebody's like first viewing of to get them hooked onto Joshi?
The stories I think people will find most intriguing, um, for take somebody who's about to be in WWE in the next upcoming weeks, and that's Julia. You know, her feud with Tam Nakano that spanned from 2021 all the way up to 2023, you know, was it literally had me on the edge of my seat. Their hair versus hair match that culminated at the Nippon Budokan in 2023 or 2021, excuse me, um, in March at All Star Dream Cinderella. That would be a great match to start out with right there. The story of Queen's Quest imploding, where Momo Watanabe turned on her faction group after having the reins of leadership for so long, when she basically took control of it from IYO Sky. So that would be another story I think everybody should definitely check out. And one that really touches my heart, the rise of Hana Kimura. And for those of you who already know the story of Hana Kimura, I mean, she started out in Oedo Tai, then became the leader of her own faction in Tokyo Cyber Squad, which was gaining a lot of fans over the time, even during the untimely passing of Hana Kimura back in May of 2020.
Yeah, that was the I believe that was the cyberbullying that happened with her. Yeah, it was a very unfortunate story because I believe she was on a reality show, and
She was on a reality show. It was, I believe the show is called Terrence House. I believe. Um, I remember watching it on Netflix before Netflix took it down completely, and watching the episode, I kept thinking this is what people were upset about.
Mhm.
You know, she didn't really do anything to garner any sort of negative heat from any sort of fans. So, but again, it's the cultural
Mhm.
differences. We don't know what people find offensive over there that we probably don't find offensive over here.
Right. Now, what was the incident for anybody who doesn't know?
So the incident was is that Hana had a her wrestling attire um put into a dryer, and the dryer basically ruined her wrestling attire, and the attire was special to her because it was a attire that she had worn for the Tokyo Dome show of that year's Wrestle Kingdom. I believe it was Wrestle Kingdom 2019, 2020, one of the two.
Mhm.
But, you know, as a lot of people know, wrestling fans like to hang on to, certain things that are sentimental to them, whether it's their attire, whether it's their boots. You know, I know it's blasphemous to say this man's name, but Hulk Hogan's got wrestling boots from WrestleMania 3 put up in some display case at some museum down there in Tampa. You know, that's how special a lot of these things are. And for that to get ruined, I'm pretty sure that broke her.
Mhm.
You know, it made her upset, as it would anybody
Mhm.
else.
And again, with all this, again, very unfortunate passing, and it just kind of shows like just the kind of like the culture, not only wrestling fans, but just like reality TV show fans in general, where they have the ability to push a little bit over the edge. And again, it's a very unfortunate situation. But with the Joshi fans, what makes them different from any wrestling fans, or are they just pretty much the same as wrestling fans?
I think they're pretty much the same as wrestling fans, where they are passionate about what they love and what they enjoy.
Mm.
You know, like I said, when I first discovered Joshi, I was like, okay, this is pretty dope. You know, it's nice to see other people being featured. And like I said, it's an all women's promotion, you know, and I know a lot of people might find that weird, but these women can go. These women are very entertaining. These women are very athletic. These women train hours upon hours. They practice their moves for days, hours, you know, just so they can be as entertaining to their fans. And their fans love them for that. And like I said, they're just passionate fans, you know. Some people may find them a little weird, but you know what? We're pro wrestling fans. We're all a little weird.
And,
All right.
that's for true.
Just look at some of the stuff that we have watched over the years, whether it's WWE, WCW, ECW, any promotion you think of. We can tell you something that's weird that's happened in that promotion, and you will probably look at us like, "Why are you a fan of this?"
That's for true. There's always like whenever I'm watching wrestling and someone who's not a fan, like will walk in on, and they'll be like, "Why are you watching this?" I'm just like, "No, I swear it gets better." And of course, the one I remember the most is I was watching wrestling and somebody came in and it was like the Kurt Angle Booker T storyline, and I'm just like, "Of course, of course you walk in. Well, this is happening." But with the
You walked in on the wrong
oh
story.
I'm like, no, he had the greatest match of the WrestleMania that year. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm just like, don't believe me, come back. But with the different Joshi wrestlers that are going to WWE, AEW, TNA, uh, but I want to talk about the AEW Joshi wrestlers that came over. Like I remember Kenny Omega being very influential within the women's division when AEW was first starting out. Riho was a
Hmm.
big one. Emi Sakurai, Maki Ito is sometimes here and there. I don't think she's officially signed, but she's made a couple of recurring appearances.
Maki is still signed with Tokyo Joshi Pro, but she is not officially signed with AEW. I believe it's that partnership with TJPW they have
Right.
with AEW that helps. bring Maki over,
Mhm.
and Maki is one of those wrestlers. I mean, if you've ever watched a GCW show, she's one of the most over Joshi wrestlers, because again, she's that entertaining,
So,
you
so
know.
Maki Ito, for people who don't know, her gimmick is like she sings herself to the ring, right? She used to be a singer, if I'm not mistaken.
She was a member of an J-pop idol group who eventually got fired and then decided to dip her toe into professional wrestling and realize, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Although it didn't start out that way, but it took her a while to actually fully develop into the professional wrestler that she is now. So
N-
I've actually seen a couple of YouTube videos explaining the rise of Maki Ito and why she is so absolutely awesome and a joy to watch.
Now, Maki Ito is definitely the entertainment part of Joshi wrestling, but since you said earlier there's not many like backstage skits like here in the United States, how do Joshi wrestlers get character over while they're inside of a wrestling ring?
Again, it goes back to telling the stories in the ring, whether it's during the match, whether it's post match. Um, a lot of time, as Stardom will hold press conferences, and I think that's the big thing that I actually like about Japanese wrestling, whether it's Stardom or whether it's New Japan Pro Wrestling. They will hold press conferences pre shows, weeks in advance, just to help get their shows over. And I think when you look at Joshi, I mean, yeah, sure. Some of it is character work, but a lot of their characters actually show like who they are in real life as a person. You start to see why. Take Tam Nakano for an example. Tam is actually facing, or she's faced Willow. Excuse me. She faced Willow Nightingale at Flashing Champions for the AEW TBS Championship. If you go back and look at Tam Nakano's history, you will know that she was a former member of an idol group who basically fell into professional wrestling, much like how Maki Ito did, and basically had a tough time trying to find herself. She was a loner who eventually got taken into a heel faction in Oedo Tai, got kicked out of Oedo Tai, and basically trying to find a home following Mayu Iwatani, you know, who she was basically fighting to find her approval. And when she realized she wasn't going to get that, she branched off to try and find herself, which she eventually did, and has become very, very successful in being a Wonder of Stardom champion, a World of Stardom champion. She's on the cusp of becoming another Grand Slam champion for Stardom.
And with Stardom, with WWE, it's very singles wrestler based promotion. With AEW, it's more about the tag team wrestlers. They were kind of pushing the tag team division a little bit more than the solo division. For Stardom and Joshi Wrestling, they seem like to be a good like mixing pot of respecting each and every style of wrestling. Is that the case?
I believe so, but the thing I really like most about it is the same thing I like with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Everything's based on this whole faction gang warfare that you got. You have several different factions that are all feuding with each other. If you go back and look at the early history of Stardom, Queen's Quest would often war with Oedo Tai, or Donna Del Mondo would feud with Cosmic Angels and stuff like that. And a lot of it would either be for championships, which people take seriously over there, or a lot of times it would just be for pride. You
Mhm.
know, the war between Queen's Quest and Oedo Tai that ended in that cage match, that was all for pride. No championships were even a part of that. They just two groups that really can't stand each other.
Now, for the US based promotions, WWE, TNA, and AEW, we always seem to get a woman's faction, but we never get two at the same time, it seems like. Do you think that's kind of like the depth of a division problem, or do you think that's more of a lack of focus since the women don't really have as many accomplishments or championships to fight over for?
I want to say it's a no sense in direction because I feel like when they stick women in a faction yet do not give another faction to feud with them, it's almost like saying, hey, we really don't have nothing for you to do, so we're gonna put you guys together, and you guys are just gonna run rum shot until we find people to actually feud with you. And you know what? A lot of times it works, and a lot of times it doesn't. I mean, for the most part, WWE seems to be doing it well. I mean, now that they've actually managed to involve the concept of war games now,
Mhm.
because I believe we've seen Damage Control now in what, one or two different war games matches
Yeah,
now,
just about.
and they've faced off against a different plethora of like four or five different women now.
Hmm. And again, it's just like you could only do the same combination of people against the faction so many times. And that's what I had a problem when they did the Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits against the LWO, because once they're done feuding with each other, you don't have anybody else to feud with, essentially, which is why the Pride, I believe they're called, uh, can't like didn't really work out as heels because they didn't have that babyface group, that hot babyface group to counteract it. So I think that's a little bit of a problem for not only WWE but AEW and TNA to a lesser degree. But with AEW, they chose Riho as their first women's champion because with Kenny Omega, he said he would really respected the Joshi style. He said it could be AEW's version of the WCW cruiserweights to introduce a new and different style of wrestling. Did you think Riho was the right choice to introduce the AEW audience to Joshi?
I'm kind of pulled in between two different people. Riho, I liked, but I also liked Hikaru Shida as well. The they weren't the same type of wrestlers, but I feel like it could have worked either way.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Hikaru did an amazing job carrying the women's division as champion during the pandemic era.
Agreed.
And I also feel like Riho did a very good job at being the very first AEW women's champion to kind of basically get everybody's eyes and be like, huh, maybe I should check out this Joshi thing and see what it's all about, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Because, like I said, I'm the type of wrestling fan that benefits on seeking out information. A lot of people like to rely on being told by a promotion why they should check it out. You know,
Yeah.
we live in the age of the internet. It's 2024 and Google's a free service. There's nothing, if your fingers ain't broken, or you know what, your computers now have a speak and say function, especially with Google or Siri. I didn't call you Siri. Anyway, just just don't be lazy.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
lazy.
Now, of course, like wrestling's at the tip of our fingers. You know what I mean? Like you could just Google something, like you said, and then something will pop up, and just like you'll learn everything about like whether it's Joshi, whether it's like someone like Hikaru Shida, like anybody like that. Now, do you think, at least with the American-based promotions, with the Joshi wrestlers that they who do have, the former Joshi wrestlers, do you think they promoted them well enough in their to make them kind of like a star of their promotion, or do you think it's one of those things? It's like, oh, they came from somewhere else, so we still need to kind of like rebrand them, so to speak.
It's got to be that second option because when I look at a lot of the Joshi wrestlers that have come over to America, it's like, yes, we know of them, but we don't know how special they truly are. And I mean, you brought it up earlier with Asuka and her undefeated streak in NXT, but by the time she got to the main roster, she was really nothing more than just another victim for Charlotte Flair. And there are people who are still scratching their heads at that, saying, why didn't Asuka be the one to dethrone Charlotte Flair? Um, Kairi Sane in her first run in WWE, I was excited for her when she first came over, because I had watched some of her stuff in Stardom. Um, I don't think that she got a fair shake the first go around. This second go around, we'll see what happens. Um, Same thing in AEW, Like I said, Hikaru Shida, I think, did an amazing job carrying the women's championship through the pandemic era. But again, it was the pandemic era. There were really no fans. The only people that were really watching wrestling were wrestling fans who were stuck in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and had nothing else to watch. Um, I really feel like, wrestling is such a global. I can't find the words, but it's something that brings us all together globally,
Mhm.
is what I'm trying to say. And American sports entertainment is not just the only style. You have strong style, you have lucha libre, you have British strong style. Um, I forget the style they call it in South Africa. Australia's got it
Mhm.
too. You know, I feel like if we were able to just come together and show just why everybody is so unique, we would have a better understanding of certain people and where they come from,
Mhm.
and even a better understanding of their characters as well.
Absolutely. I always think of wrestling kind of like this giant mixing pot of ideas. And when people say it's like, oh, AEW doesn't know how to tell a story or WWE is too linear, I always say that wrestling, like, depending where you are, it's like a different universe, right? Everyone runs on their own psychology. Nobody is going to tell the story the exact same way. Like, take Batman, the animated series, and One Piece. Both are drawn, both are like hand drawn or computer animated works of like cartoons or animation, but they're different styles of animation, but they're still giving the viewer an enjoyment on how to tell a story. Wrestling's the same way, in my opinion. And
Hmm.
with Joshi, I think a lot of people were influenced by that style that are currently in WWE, in AEW, in TNA. And that's only going to evolve and change over time, that it's going to show people a brand new thing. It's kind of like when TNA was first started happening and Petey Williams hit the Canadian Destroyer, everybody was like, what was that? And now you're seeing Canadian Destroyers everywhere. Some moves are diluted. I know a lot of people, myself included, kind of criticize, like, it's like, oh, million super kicks, million things like that. But when we were watching wrestling, people were doing like DDTs like it was nothing. Like everyone was doing DDT when it was a finisher beforehand. Like Chavo Guerrero did the moonsault, popularized it, and now everyone does a moonsault. And it's not really a finish anymore. So it's kind of like the same thing with styles. Things are going to change and evolve over time. And with Joshi, was there like a match, whether it was WWE, AEW, where you looked at a former Joshi wrestler and just said, "That's the same person that I saw in Stardom," or insert Joshi promotion here?
I see a lot of it with Toni Storm. Um, haven't really seen much of Isla Dawn's matches in WWE, but she had some pretty good matches in Stardom as well. Same thing with Kaylee Ray, who's now Alba Fire.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe the best example of that is Toni Storm. You know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I've said it on numerous occasions, she is the best women's champion right now.
I
you
agree.
know,
Yeah. I,
I mean, her gimmick is second to none, you know, and the fact that she has been able to evolve her character from the punk rocker from down under
mhm,
to this timeless Toni Storm character
mhm.
just lets you know just how incredibly gifted she is at her craft.
What's even more amazing with Tony Storm is not only did she create this character, this original character, where things being original in wrestling and working aren't really guaranteed, it's also the fact that whatever feud that she's in, she seems to like almost add another layer to her persona without going too far deep into like breaking the fourth wall. She's playing everything 100% straight. And I think just character wise, not only for the women, for including the men, tag teams, whatever you want to say, she has the best character going right now. Only next to probably Christian, who's doing the father deal.
We actually, I was in a live in TikTok. We actually had this discussion about people who feel like ex WWE guys, and I hate that term,
Yeah.
who go over to other promotions and feel like their characters aren't getting over as well. Well, bring up Tony Storm, or bring up Claudio Castagnoli. Those guys are miles ahead of what they once were in WWE. I think they've gotten over tremendously. Same thing with John Moxley. You brought up Christian Cage. Those guys have definitely evolved their characters to something that they have gotten over very well with the AEW crowd and even with professional wrestling crowds as well. Um, I'll give you another example. Bryan Danielson. Yes, some of his moves are still the same, but he's kind of tapped in more to his indie side rather than, the sports entertainer, Daniel Bryan guy.
Yeah. I remember when Brian Danielson and Daniel Bryan went to WWE. My friend and I, we were just getting into Ring of Honor, so we were kind of excited to see what was going on. And we always wanted to see cattle mutilation, which was his finish at the time. But we would never see it. We would just see like the yes lock or the label lock. And for me, I thought since it was WWE, I'm just like, okay, they probably want to see the person's facial expression for cattle mutilation. So that's why he doesn't do it as much. And when he busted it out, I think he busted out in like that draw against Omega. I was just like, like it took so many years, but I finally watched it in person. So it's like little things like that that I really do enjoy and appreciate AEW and what they bring to the table because you get to see a different side of somebody you probably wouldn't have seen in WWE. And definitely with AEW, I don't think we get the Toni Storm. Even if Toni Storm was the same exact character in WWE, I don't think we would get as much as we've gotten in AEW. Same thing with when Broken Matt went to WWE. We got like a different version.
Woken,
We got Woken Matt Hardy,
woken Matt.
where he's just talking and he's playing chess with goldfish. So it's like because even Matt
It, it,
yeah, even Matt Hardy said he was just like he's like I don't think Vince understood the character, so he just had me laugh a lot. And I'm just like,
it, it, it goes back to what you said. There's two different psychologies and how wrestling works. I got a buddy on TikTok, Mid South NWA. If you guys ever heard of him, go follow him. He's often said there's more than one correct way to tell a story. WWE, yes, they know how to tell stories. But again, name me a story that actually worked and did not fail. you know, that you thought was supposed to work and did not fail, or it ended up failing. Um, I'm messing up his words, but yeah, name a WWE story that ended up failing. You know, I can give you several. Katie Vick, um, DX in 2006. You know,
just a lot of different stories in WWE were failures, and it's just like one of those deals where it's like when you bring up, it's like, hey, this happened, and we all know what happened, but people are like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It's just like, let's let's pull up the receipts.
we have the network on Peacock. Let's rewind the
Yeah,
tape.
it's like, oh, they got rid of it. Oh, here's a grainy YouTube version of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think Ric Flair did a promo on Randy Orton before Taboo Tuesday that got cut because Rick went off script as Rick would do, and he
Yeah,
said some unkind words about
right.
Randy Orton. It was just like out of pocket. Of course, it was one of those moments where somebody walked in and I was watching wrestling, so I was like, all right. I see how it is. But with women's wrestlers, we've heard them say it's like, oh, Eddie Guerrero's an influence, Rey Mysterio's an influence, John Cena's an influence, like that. Is there any like male talent that you see that were inspired by the Joshi style?
Have you ever read Will Ospreay's tweets lately? I mean, Will has actually given a lot of females their just due. You know, I know he's given Saya Kamitani much props and respect when he used to date B Priestley, who's now known as Blair Davenport in WWE.
Mm.
He would give her props. He's given Momo Watanabe props. Um, but as far as women's wrestlers of the past from the male wrestlers, I can't really recall or even say. I know they've actually sat up and said, you know, women like Sherry Martel is very influential, but I've only seen it when they're doing like a documentary series about it.
Right.
As far as having male wrestlers be influenced by female wrestlers to their persona or their character, I have yet to see that.
And with WWE and AEW's women's divisions, or even TNA's women's division, their knockout division, there's a lot of talent there, whether they're utilized correctly or not. Who do you think from WWE, AEW, or TNA would thrive in a Joshi promotion that hasn't been there before?
I would say TNA's knockout division. There have been a lot of wrestling fans who have said that TNA's knockouts division is by far the best women's division
Mhm.
here in the Western world. So I would say that if TNA's knockouts division actually goes over into like a Joshi setting, I think they would be just fine. AEW is a close second. I would have to rank WWE third because, again, it's not about WWE hate. It's just what I see. They're more on the sports entertainment side. They're more on promoting their superstars. The in-ring psychology is not the same that they have in a Joshi setting. So
Mhm.
it is what it is to me.
And do you think that entertainment side kind of holds WWE's women back to a certain extent compared to Stardom's wrestlers?
No, because like I said, it's the differences in culture. Over here, we tend to prefer, that larger than life superstars,
Hmm.
It, whereas over in Japan, they enjoy quality wrestling, storytelling within the wrestling, and then, getting a show afterwards after that. So again, it's the differences in psychology. So it depends on what you're a fan of.
That's completely fair. The current state of Joshi Wrestling, I believe they opened another promotion because the old person of Stardom left. Is that correct?
So the story is that Rossi Ogawa, the founder of Stardom, he was set to actually resign his position. The company was bought out by Bushiroad, who also owns New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's why we have been getting a lot of crossover shows with Stardom and New Japan. Um, the deal is that Rossi was getting very frustrated because Bushiroad had taken control of a lot of the creative decisions that were going on. I'll give you an example. The recent 5-star Grand Prix tournament that we talked about, Suzu Suzuki won it. So she was guaranteed a title match for the red belt at the end of the year's all Stardom Dream Queendom event in December. Their big show to end out the year. Well, at the time, the red belt was held up because the champion at the time, Tam Nakano, suffered a knee injury, so the title was vacated. Um, they ended up finding an opponent for Suzu. They decided on Micah, who a lot of fans were actually starting to be drawn to. Um, and Bushiro decided to put the title on Micah rather than Suzu. Rossi wanted the title to go on Suzu Suzuki rather than Micah. And I believe that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And Rossi was just like, you know what? I'm I'm washing my hands of it. I'm out. Here's my resignation date. Well, he set his resignation date, but before he fully resigned, he was actually trying to poach talent from the Stardom roster, as well as many other people who are responsible for helping him build the promotion that he got, rose up to prominence. And there were people backstage who were finding this out, and they basically put a stop to it and said, you know what? We see what you're doing. It's best to let you go now.
Mhm.
And that's essentially what happened. Now, Rossi was able to get a few Stardom talent to go with him in Julia, in Utami Hayashishita, in Mirai, in Mai Sakurai. So, and even Yuzuki as well, who was a young rookie. So, those 5 individuals are basically helping Rossi start up this new promotion in Marigold. So, I mean, I guess now Rossi has control of his own promotion like he always wanted. But I mean, only time will tell to see just how successful it is. I think it's going to do very well and give the people of Japan uh, the best wrestling competition that they can have when it comes to Joshi.
Mm.
I mean, it's basically what we have here now with WWE and AEW. I always say competition creates a better product. So, with the competition in Joshi, with Stardom and now Marigold, only time will tell just to see who creates the better shows.
And Rossi is kind of I don't want to say like controversial figure to some, but he definitely is very polarizing. I know Kenny Omega said some things about him on a Twitch stream. And was it Rossi and Asuka that had kind of a little tiff, or like, because I remember Asuka didn't really have any like really big positive things to say about Stardom when she was
So,
claiming she was getting like edged out.
so Asuka had, she had some heat with her in Japan. She didn't like talking to the press a whole lot. And she even said in her memoirs that Stardom was basically created to basically kind of weed her out of the Joshi scene. I mean, she had her very own promotion with Kana Pro Wrestling, I believe it was what it was called. But, you know, her, I did hear the, what Kenny Omega said on the Twitch stream. Like I said, or like I have said in the past, I don't know what's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, whoever knows something, then when they come out, you know, excuse me, when they are able to come out and speak on what's been going on, there are some things about Rossi's way he does business where I'm kind of looked at it like, huh, I wonder why he runs business the way he does, where he takes a specific person in a specific age group and does things like this. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's all speculation and hearsay at the moment.
Right.
We don't know what's true. I'm not going to jump on it until there are multiple reports from multiple people.
Mhm.
So,
Which is how learning information should be. You just don't take one
hmm
side of a report. You don't take half a report and then kind of run with it and then kind of add your own ideas to it. You got to have multiple different sources that don't even talk to each other, who can confirm these stories, and then you could go and then criticize or um, come to your own conclusion. Because there's always three sides: one side, the other side, and the truth. And it's going to be somewhere in the middle, that information that's going on. But with
I mean, I love Kenny Omega and I love Asuka,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I mean, it's their word versus Rossi's word.
Right.
So, again, we just need more information.
hmm And who knows when or if that information is going to come out in this lifetime. That's the tricky thing about information, and especially with wrestling information. We're always clamoring for more, but they're always given to us in small little breadcrumbs of information, but we don't have the full loaf in front of us. And sometimes we don't ever get that full loaf of bread of information. And then there will be a self-destruction DVD years and years. Well, I guess not DVD at that point, because no one buys the DVDs anymore. But
No,
neither here nor there.
everything's on the network.
Oh my goodness. I still have my tub of literally just like giant wrestling DVDs. And I'm just like, am I ever gonna pop one in occasionally? And then it's like I found like the tag team like Allied Powers. I'm like, I haven't watched this one in a while. This is fine.
uh, Before me and my brother moved into this place, I didn't have my internet set up, so I was playing a lot of my wrestling DVDs through my PlayStation 4. So,
Ooh, nice. Which DVDs?
definitely the Ring of Honor ones, the PWG DDT,
Ooh.
the tournaments that they had there, Bola, Battle of Los Angeles. For those of you who are big PWG heads, um, I was actually watching like the best of war games before I actually got my internet set up too, because I am a fan of those war games matches. probably the most silliest one was like the Hulkamaniacs versus the Dungeon of Doom, and yeah,
Now that
I
one,
was like, you know what, this is silly, but I still enjoy it.
now was that the different one with electric chair in the middle? That was the Doomsday match.
That one was Halloween Havoc, and I believe it had featured like Abdullah the Butcher
Yeah,
in there, and that was like that weird. I mean, WCW had a lot of silly gimmicks.
yeah,
Let's just keep it real. But yeah, I believe that one was Halloween Havoc.
yeah. Because I remember them talking about it on like one of those Legends of Wrestling roundtables, and they were going over
Yes,
worst gimmicks, and I think it was Hogan and Savage versus like 12 other people. It was ridiculous,
I
and
believe that was uncensored 1996. It was like the triple stack
yeah,
cage. Where it wasn't even in the middle of the arena. It was by the stage,
yeah,
and I just remember like, why did they do
yeah.
this? Like, can't nobody see it? You got to have a big screen to watch it now.
It's one of those things where I'm just like aesthetically, I'm like, what are they thinking? It almost reminds me of like, remember like Seth Rollins and the Fiend in Hell in a Cell? Like it was a red cage with red lighting, and like I'm watching it, I'm like, I can barely see what's going on. I can't imagine what the other people in the arena must be thinking.
I think the decision on the red Hell in a Cell cage was another of Vince McMahon being out of touch, where he's like, you know what, we'll really sell this? Make Hell in a Cell red, like
Yeah.
hell.
It was
And I'm like,
a surprise.
sure. And I'm pretty sure somebody in the back was like, yeah, Vince, that'll
Yeah.
sell
Yeah,
tickets.
for every
Paint the Hell in a Cell red.
for that lovely thing. You could go back in the archives. Me and Bald Bro go over WWE in 2019, and we go over the entire 2019 of WWE, including that Hell in a Cell match. But anyway,
I think if I think I'm gonna go in chronological order of like WWE, I skip 2019.
yeah, that's one of the big years where it's like I'm like, oh, I can miss this. Like right after the Kofi win, I'm like, all right, that's all I need.
Yep,
Now
that's pretty much all you need.
yeah,
Just see Kofi Mania. I'm like, yep, I'm
yep.
done.
It's like, yep, this is how the story ends, and then you're like, it's like after Endgame, it's like, oh no, we got like WandaVision, we got like we got Captain Falcon, the Winter Soldier. And you're like, nope, it's like, nope, we're good. We stopped at Phase 4, we're good. But but anyway, we're about to wrap up here. But first of all, thank you for your time. Next, I'll ask you a couple of final questions about just Joshi and the wrestling in general. Now, you went over like what stories you would recommend to somebody who's first getting into Joshi. Now, what matches, if you were to composite like a top 3 or top 5, if you could think of them, what would you recommend, and maybe give like the reason why? And if you don't have a reason, just say they're awesome. That's fine too.
I mean, when it comes to top Joshi matches, the one I mentioned earlier with Tam Nakano and Julia, hair versus hair for the Wonder of Stardom title in 2021 at All Star Dream Cinderella. That one was good because again, it told a very good story. And if you have never heard of Julia, go look up that match right there. She is definitely somebody who you will enjoy. Um, her matches with Shorty were great. The her matches with Suzu Suzuki, because there's such an interesting backstory between her and Suzu. Because Julia came from a promotion called Ice Ribbon, and I love that name, by the way. Um, she came from the Ice Ribbon promotion, and at first, when she left, there was some controversy about her resignation from the company, that it wasn't fully accepted and that she couldn't go and compete in Stardom. So, but apparently, her and Suzu had a very interesting relationship where they became such good friends and became very close with one another. And then Julia ends up leaving. Suzu stays in Ice Ribbon to basically fend for herself. So Suzu basically sees it as a betrayal. So yeah, definitely look up Julia and Suzu Suzuki matches from Stardom as well. Um, if I could have to give another match, I would say I would say 5-star Grand Prix final of 2019 between Konami and Hana Kimura.
Any particular reason why?
Um, just with me being a Hana Kimura fan, and because those two were in a faction known as Tokyo Cyber Squad, and they did a very good job of, performing in the match and basically say, like we said, yes, there are factions in companies, but rarely do you see members of the same faction going at it for an individual goal.
Mm.
And the 5-star Grand Prix winner eventually gets a title shot of their choosing. So to see these two women basically tear each other apart just to win the crown of the 5-star Grand Prix and actually get a title shot, those two basically put it out on the line.
Mm. All right, listeners, please check those matches out, and I will check those matches out, and I will give my thoughts and reviews on a future show. But that is then, this is now. Deenard, aka Light Skin Gajin, thank you so much for joining me and teaching me about everything Joshi Wrestling. Please tell the wonderful people what you got coming up. If you want to advertise any shows, anything, your social medias, the floor is, as they say, is yours.
I mean, you can follow me on all my socials at Light Skin Gajin on TikTok, Instagram, and even on YouTube. I have been right now in the process of trying to make a video about the comparisons to WWE and AEW and why I feel like people just need to steal a phrase from Tetsuya Naito, tranquilo on the whole AEW has a problem. But definitely follow me on all of those platforms if you can.
All right, thank you, my good friend right here. Again, I'll follow him, please. I will co-sign it. Great content, entertaining content, which is few and far between when it comes to the wrestling side of TikTok. It's usually just people screaming and yelling about like what is going on with the wrestling business. But let me just say, this is one of the few people that I watch on TikTok where I sit down, I watch, maybe like get a hot cup of cocoa, and then I could just like chill out because I know it's going to be a pleasant experience. So, sir, thank you for all the content that you give.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
All right. Again, this is going to go for this episode of Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. Again, you could listen to the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, follow us on the TikTok and the Instagram at Retold Richie Mars. New videos every day on the TikTok. We usually try to get 3 a day, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but you will get multiple videos a day. I'm Richie Mars, TTFN, Tata for now, and I will see you next time.